Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Worldwide Wednesdays, another day of streaming in this wonderful dystopian nightmare we call life. In part, we are going to be covering the Sudan massacres. We're going to be covering China, the Chinese Space Center. We're going to be covering Israeli aggression, more extrajudicial murders of innocent Latin Americans, and apparently even maybe Nigerians by the American military, and so much more, because of course that is what our International News Day has become. So with with that in mind, I do welcome you all back to the stream. We will try and cover some halfway enjoyable news, like the Chinese space station should be a positive, and so should Andrew, Prince Andrew being held accountable be a positive video. So we are trying to sprinkle it in there. It's just hard to do. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the stream. We will just go ahead and jump right into that. So the Sudan massacre is something that has been building. Is my mouse not going to work? So the Sudan massacre. Why is Tucker Carlson here? What the hell? Anyway, the Sudan massacre has been an ongoing event that has been eclipsed by the Russian-Ukraine war and the genocide Israel is committing against Palestine. But make no mistake, what we are seeing here in the Sudan is no less appalling than any of the other atrocities that we've been covering. That's Ryan Grimm. That looks like Tucker Carlson. I'm sorry, Ryan. You didn't deserve that.
We're going to have to fully brief all of us. I know this happened overnight here, but I do think it's an important story.
Yeah, so
Sudan mass killings.
Yeah, in the town of Al Fasher was where the kind of Syrian army capital has been in North Darfur. And there's been this civil war going on since 2023. And
so literally, same events that have been eclipsed by the genocide being committed by Israel. So to anybody who this directly affects or have been wanting to know more about this, I apologize for only now getting to it literally 2 years later. But that's one of the reasons why when it comes to foreign events, it's so difficult to find the news, because it depends on what is the West even reporting on, or is it even being covered by independent networks like Breaking Point? So anyway, I just want to keep highlighting that this isn't new. This isn't something that is just now happening, but these atrocities coming to light are.
The UAE has come in heavily, United Arab Emirates has come in heavily on the side of what's called the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. And a year ago, the U.S. State Department said the RSF is committing ethnic cleansing in Darfur and in Sudan, and the support of the UAE has continued to pay. So you can put up A8 here, and so Al Fasher finally yesterday, and over the last couple of days, but it has kind of now fully fallen to the RSF, and what you're looking at here are a ton of people rounded up by the RSF who, as we understand it, and there is much more disturbing video that would confirm this that we're not going to show you here, were then executed. And this is not the first time.
So, just to put into perspective, everybody that was in this video that was just being shown, which is easily hundreds of people, were executed by the RSF. And there's apparently video footage from that.
We're not going to show you here. Were then executed. And this is not the first time that the RSF has taken over a city, and estimates of civilian massacres as a result have been over 10,000, like in a particular city. Like this absolute horrific bloodbath.
Which is still a drop in the bucket compared to the absolute horrors that Israel has levied against Palestinians. Again, we don't even actually know the total death toll because there hasn't been a way to keep track of it because of the sheer amount of devastation and destruction that has been ongoing in the Gaza Strip. Needless to say, you can't help but compare these two things. Both are horrific, but for context, what is happening here with the RSF pales in comparison to the genocide that Israel is committing, but it is still heinous. Yeah, sorry, Simply Steve. We aren't covering the New York City mayoral race today, but I'll let you guys handle that in chat.
If we put up A9, a lot of the OSINT people online are saying they have never seen visible blood
Yeah.
from space.
But what precipitated this? That's
Well, so
that's my
what
question.
precipitated this precisely is El Fasher has been basically surrounded by the RSF for a year and a half, and it's one of the remaining key strongholds of the SAF, their opposition, so what precipitated the massacre was that they finally managed to break through and take it. What precipitated it more broadly is gold. Basically, Sudan has significant wealth.
Yeah, we did cover that the Sudan, it was Sudan or Niger, had just found like $30 trillion worth of gold within their land. Like not 30 trillion tons, which is still a shit ton, right? But like $30 trillion worth of gold in Niger now. And of course, Africa has always been rich in mineral resource and has been plundered since as long as Africa has been under the scrutiny of other countries, right? Or at least since Africa fell from a international superpower. So the fact that the RSF, which is clearly like this terrorist, freedom-fighting, whatever group, is trying to gain control over gold, over actual gold refineries and stuff like that, which would give them an exponential amount of funding and sourcing to commit more of these atrocities. So, this video is obviously a little bit longer, but I think, well, no, let's listen just to a touch bit more here.
Underneath its
And why is
ground.
the UAE supporting this militia?
So the UAE, the UAE has this massive Africa play that it's been doing. It had the UAE.
So, and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, the same UAE who is trying to protect Palestine and condemn Israel, is supporting the RAF for massacring Sudanian citizens because, once again, geopolitics, colonization isn't just the purview of the West, it's the purview of anyone with power and influence. And it's something that, as a species, we have not been able to get away from, apparently ever, because it's happening today in the present.
The UAE is supporting African proxy forces all over the continent, like absolutely everywhere. And the UAE, like Qatar, is technically a country, but it's more like an investment vehicle / mafia.
Sure.
That is trying to figure out how to take this wealth that has come out of the ground, this fossil fuel wealth that it's created in the last several decades, and only several decades, like 50 years ago or so. This is a deeply poor area. Now it's like the richest place on Earth. They know that that's not going to last forever. At some point, you tap the last bit of natural gas and oil. And so their question is, what next for us? And what's next for them is that they're building ports and creating alliances all over Africa for the continued extraction of natural resources and funding all of these civil conflicts to make it easier for them to then get access, oftentimes kind of arming.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much, I mean, the purpose of this stream isn't to do a deep dive on all of the stories. The idea is to get information, share that information, and then my hot takes on said information. And honestly, it is absolutely heartbreaking how much suffering the entire continent of Africa continues to endure. Whether it's the plundering by Western countries and the IMF, whether it's the UAE sponsoring terrorism in various countries like the Sudan so that they can invest in natural resources extraction. It's heinous. It's absolutely fucking heinous that all of these countries look at Africa and start to drool and do not even view the African continent, any of the African countries, as people, as sovereign states, as equals in any sense of the word. And it's just depressing. It is heartbreaking that it isn't just European powers running on fumes from the colonization era, but now the Middle East is getting involved in it. China's getting involved in it. Russia's getting involved in it. Hell, probably some South American countries are getting involved in it. And the plundering and the pain and the suffering just goes round and round and round. And honestly, it's also depressing that even the great leaders that are emerging from Africa, Captain Traoré, for instance, still have social injustices as part of their mantra, like making it illegal to be gay in Burkina Faso. Like, that's... You cannot build a forward-facing society or an independent society if you're still going to subjugate your own people for existing in their natural element. And I don't know what it's going to take to liberate Africa and the various African countries. Pan-Africa might be the framework that achieves liberation, but can they achieve it without the influence and without being constantly needled by the Middle East, China, and Europe? It's extremely frustrating to see. It's on the same level of frustration and powerlessness of seeing Gaza get massacred by Israel with the full-throated support of basically Western powers. It's devastating. And they're also mostly Muslims. They don't care. It all goes back to capitalism. And that's the point, right? This has nothing to do with ideology. This has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with even different social values. It has everything to do with extracting wealth to acquire profit. And right now, they have the wealth that they can spend to extract more wealth to achieve more profit. Capitalism is literally the most vicious, plundering, destructive ideal that we have ever created as human beings. It is more violent than war. It is more violent as disease. It's more devastating than climate change. Because at least disease and climate change are natural cycles, and war, although maybe not natural, is at least not for the sake of profit 90%, or at least up until, recent history, it wasn't for the sake of profit. It was for land and resources. There was at least a greater reason for it other than just, well, it's going to make us lots of money, so let's go ahead and do that. So, yeah. We will definitely be keeping an eye on the Sudan. The United Nations...
This is Democracy Now!
...seems to be on a roll of holding votes to hold the United States and Israel accountable, but without actually being able to follow through with it. So let's at least hear about the denouncement and see what that gets us. But really and truly, the more votes that they hold and the less anything is done about it, the more toothless it is shown the United Nations to be. That the institution is that weak and incapable of actually affecting international law if they can't even hold Israel and the United States accountable.
DemocracyNow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
We end today's show in Cuba. On Wednesday, the United Nations General Assembly voted to condemn the U.S. embargo on Cuba for the 33rd consecutive year, with 165 countries voting in favor of a non-binding resolution calling on the U.S. to lift the embargo.
It's a non-binding... See, this is the... Already, we are barely a minute into the actual content of the video, and they're voting on a non-binding resolution to the United States. Like, okay, so all these countries agree the United States should do it, but if they vote for it, America doesn't have to do a damn thing. Like, that's absolutely insane.
The U.S. reportedly pressured, voted against it, including Ukraine and Israel. On Tuesday, Trump's UN ambassador, Mike Waltz, broke with tradition to give a long speech from the stage at the UN General Assembly during the debate on the embargo, urging countries to reject the resolution. Waltz was also Trump's national security advisor and infamously set up a Signal group chat earlier this year to discuss plans to bomb Yemen. And then.
So this ass clown set up the Signal chat and then got promoted to being UN ambassador. Like, you can only fail up in the Trump administration so long as you continue to kiss the ring.
Accidentally invited Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg to join. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Padilla made a point of order as Waltz spoke.
They undermine democracies in our hemisphere.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but there's a point of order from Cuba.
Sure. Madam President, yes.
Yes, we have to give the floor to the point of order and the representative of Cuba.
The permanent representative of the United States not only lies by substantially deviating from the topic, but also speaks in a rude and arrogant manner.
Damn.
Mr. Walsh, this is the United Nations General Assembly. This is not a Signal chat, nor is it the House of Representatives.
Wednesdays.
Like, but that's the thing. As cheeky as that was, that doesn't hold America accountable at all. It does show that Cuba has some chutzpah, and that's great. Absolutely do that. It is absolutely a mic drop moment for Cuba and this guy, right? But if gotcha moments and shaming the Republicans in power actually did anything, then we would be a much better off country, because we would be able to shame the Republicans into serving the country and following the Constitution. They're calling us savages. Cuba gives no fucks. No, I mean, that's all very well. I mean, that is all true. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying gotchas aren't getting us anywhere. They're still gonna... It's like we're playing chess, the rest of the world is playing chess, and America is playing checkers. And even though we're being mocked horrifically for playing checkers while everyone else is playing chess, all we care about is being able to portray the message of our checkers match and getting it to the constituents that and the followers that support it. That's all it is. Because if governance and saving face and doing the right thing mattered, then we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place, right? The whole point is to stir up controversy. The whole point is to beat your chest. The whole point is to insult countries and insult the other to make yourself look stronger, which, as we know, makes you look weak. But that doesn't matter to them, because to their base, to their supporters, being a bully is strength. So what we need to do is several-fold. The first thing that we need to do is collectively not give that behavior merit. Do not give it a platform. Do not give it the opportunity to rise. Do not treat it as something worthwhile. Don't give it the authenticity that it seeks, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to then shut it the fuck down. The third is to denounce it reprehensively with our own messaging that showcases the right way of doing things, right? Or at the very least, a better way of doing things. And then reaching people in that empathetic way. Now, I say that knowing that you're not going to reach the cult with empathy, but you are going to reach the masses with empathy. And that is what needs to happen, the societal polar shift. And it's not just America. We're seeing fascism rise in literally every single country on planet Earth, and only a few of those regimes have been thwarted in the elections. But we are seeing them struggle to claim and hold on to power, and even in some cases retaliate with brutal crackdowns against protesters and dissenters. Sure, there's also been a few overthrows of those same administrations, but we also haven't seen a replacement take real effect either. Right? So that means the long and short of that is the violence does not beget violence. It's all about the message. And it's not just in the United States, it's all over the world. We need to start reaching each other as people, not as individuals, but as human beings living in a modern society. Because if we continue to allow the narrative to be taken from us and directed to us, this is the nonsense we're going to see. We're going to see Cuba giving the middle finger to America, and America taking a shit on the chessboard and strutting around like they just won. And that's the point that I was trying to make. So let's see what else we got in this
came
video.
as Hurricane Melissa struck eastern Cuba after hitting Jamaica, causing major damage, but no reported deaths after more than 700,000 people evacuated. For more, we're joined by two guests.
I think we didn't get around to covering Jamaica. So hopefully Democracy Now! Is going to do that now so that we can...
Mikhail Wolf is Associate Professor of History at Stanford University, specializing in Latin America and the Caribbean. He wrote a Washington Post piece headlined, "When it comes to hurricanes, the U.S. can learn a lot from Cuba." And in the eastern Cuban province of Santiago de Cuba, we are joined by Liz Oliva Fernandez, a reporter with Belly of the Beast who's on the ground covering the storm's impact. Liz, welcome back to Democracy Now! Why don't you explain what happened? I mean, we're talking about, we don't know how many deaths in the rest of the Caribbean, from Haiti to Jamaica. What happened in Cuba?
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me being here. Well, in Cuba, no one's dead. There is no casualties there is no human lives that we lost.
That's right. The major Cat 5 hurricane that absolutely devastated Jamaica also hit Cuba, but Cuba had such a fantastic response plan in place that no fatalities or even casualties occurred, which is absolutely impressive. So let's definitely pay attention to this.
That's because the labor and the work of the civil defense of Cuba, something that I'm pretty sure that the Professor Mikhail has a lot to say about that. But I'm just going to say that United Nations has been writing down that Cuba is one of example, is a role model when we talk about risk management disasters.
700,000 Cubans were evacuated leading up to this storm. If you can describe how that happened and what that model is.
Yeah, well, this is something that starts before the hurricane touches land. The work of the civil defense started really early in this Tuesday morning. So they're trying to evacuate as many people as possible. And they, for example, the way they look is focus on prevention. For example, if you live close to the coast, if you live in a house where the infrastructure is weak, you're gonna be evacuated. That there is a different kind of evacuations that we have in Cuba. For example, some is that you are taken to a government institution. They are going to take care of you. And the other one is you are going to a house that could be a friend, a family, a relative, a neighbor that is going to host you during the hurricane because their house is better prepared for facing an hurricane than yours.
So that's actually pretty interesting because it sounds like the evacuation orders are compulsory, meaning not only are they compulsory, but they're also coordinated with the government. Now, there's a crazy idea. How many of these hurricanes and tropical storms that hit our country every single year could have damage in lives and fatalities absolutely mitigated, if not erased altogether, if it was compulsory to evacuate? How many people stay behind and like, oh, it ain't that bad. I've been through a hurricane before, and then are dead. Like, and never mind the fact that we don't even have shelters in place for anywhere. Like, there are no government facilities, especially in the South, because small government, right? And the damn liberals wanting to spend our tax dollars on things. We don't even have the infrastructure to evacuate people. But imagine if, I don't know, we did. Like, imagine if that was our emergency response. Compulsory evacuation with actual government facilities designed to take in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to shelter in place and weather out the actual storm. In fact, that is outstanding. I'm going to add that as an idea for a website, for a policy position. Specific policy outlining disaster preparedness, compulsory evacuations and evacuation centers built and maintained by the government. Because, again, the government isn't evil. The government, when it no longer serves the needs of the people, that's evil. And, again, it's our complacency that allows that stuff to happen. I think we're doing good. I think we're on a roll here. Steve, you're proving my point. I want to be in a hurricane once in my life. Now, here's the thing. I have been through several hurricanes. I guess they're called typhoons in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know why. We could Google it, but I'm not that pressed about it. But the difference between surviving a typhoon or surviving a hurricane in a place that is fraught with them, like, the island of Okinawa, is the construction and the quality of construction of the buildings, right? Our dorms, our barracks on that military installation were built with like this thick concrete as the walls, as the base, right? With thick windows. Like, you couldn't just open those windows for funsies. Like, they were thick, weatherproof windows. And the entire island is constructed to be durable because, again, they have been dealing with these hurricanes and typhoons for centuries, if not millennia. The fact that the United States continues to build matchsticks houses at the very edge of the coast and not building coastal breakers or windbreaks or any of the flood protection barriers that you could build, or making homes out of actual, that very thick concrete and very thick glass. Like, the fact that we continue to build things cheaply and for profit along all of our coasts and just constantly rebuild and rebuild and rebuild is absolutely insane. It's actually it is the pinnacle of stupidity. It is literally expecting a different outcome by doing the same thing over and over again. That is literally the definition of insanity. So, all of which is to say, let's go right along to the next crisis.
A blockade by Al-Qaeda plunging a city of four.
Wow. Are we back in 2013? Al-Qaeda goes from being the enemy terrorist group to the leadership group, to the terrorist group, to the leadership group, to the terrorist group, to the leadership group, and now, apparently, back to the terrorist group.
4 million people into darkness. At dawn, Bamako streets are eerily quiet. The morning light wakens those who've slept in their cars, waiting for petrol. For 2 months, Al-Qaeda fighters have disrupted trade routes to this landlocked country, choking Mali's capital. Satellite images taken from space show the scale of the crisis. Fuel queues stretching for kilometers across the city. Fatoumata's sandwich shop, once alive with the morning rush, now stands silent. A small window on a city that stopped moving.
Before, I made pancakes with 3 kilos of millet. Now, I can barely afford one. If Assimi Goïta doesn't act, we will all suffer.
So, there's the thing, right? when we talk about fuel and oil and all this stuff, it isn't necessarily just gasoline that fuels our vehicles. Most countries actually rely on kerosene, right? On actual fuel combusting in ovens and furnaces and whatever have you, generators to generate electricity or the power, the things that they need in order to do work, to to create and generate electricity. Not to bash the third world status, but that is also by design, right? Because of the IMF and everything else. So without beating that dead horse, when you have rogue groups disrupting supply chains of fuel to countries or cities, but in this case, it seems to be the whole country, this is the result. Complete shutdown of infrastructure and struggling to be able to just make basic necessities and to have basic amenities like water, fuel, heat, air condition, being able to run appliances.
The suffering has already begun. The hum of sewing machines has fallen silent. Tailors, once busy cutting fabric, now sit in anxious discussion. How long can this last, they ask. When will it stop?
When you can't work, the whole family stops. Everyone suffers.
Only 6 hours of electricity a day, and that too depends on fuel supplies. For many in Bamako, life itself is now running out of energy. Commercial flights are disrupted, schools and universities have shut down. But on national television, there is no word on people's hardship, only praise. Headlines celebrating how well the regime under Army General Assimi Goita is doing.
Wow. So, again, military occupation, fascism, authoritarianism, spewing propaganda of how great things are when there are literally cities worth of people who are unable to literally exist, to actually go about their daily routines. Schools are shut down, universities are shut down, employment areas are shut down, hospitals are more than likely affected as well. This is unsustainable. Yet, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do the 1984 thing where we report that everything is fine on hunky dory and it's never been better. Honestly, America, as the longer this government shutdown lasts, and the further the crisis between SNAP, WIC, and the Affordable Care Act, the longer those things go without being funded, and the sooner people start feeling the negative backlash from not having those funds and resources, we're going to start seeing the same propaganda spew forth on our news networks. America's doing great. The workforce has never been stronger. People have never been happier. Meanwhile, poverty runs rampant. Starvation is on the rise. Homelessness is on the rise. And will people at that point finally protest and organize? It's not happening in Mali. Is it going to happen in America? Will it happen in Mali? Will it happen in America? This is gut-wrenching in a different way, because this is honestly foreshadowing of what America is going to be looking like if things do not change in the next few days, weeks, or months. Here's my question. Can the movement started last night be built upon and grown? The short answer is yes. But, so, the movement, that is Zoran Memdani's New York City mayoral campaign, candidacy, and victory, is isolated to New York City. If those individuals that were a part of his campaign would spread out to other parts of the country, or even if we're just doing neighboring and we're doing here's New York City, and then we go in the radius, and then we go out and we go out. Yes, that is how a movement should work. That is exactly the kind of momentum that you would want from a successful campaign, to then spread that success outwards. But, and unfortunately I must emphasize that, is not ever going to happen. The one time it has attempted to happen was during Bernie 2016, when he lost, gave up, whatever. His campaign staff turned into Our Revolution. And then that was headed up by, now all of a sudden I forgot her name. And she's from Ohio. Nina Turner, sorry. That was then headed up by Nina Turner, and it has since become... I mean, when was the last... Is Our Revolution even still active? It does not look like... Yeah, so it looks like the last time they did anything was in 2018. So there have been attempts, but unfortunately it just never amounts to anything. So the answer is yes, we could. But it's probably not going to happen.
As the capital sinks deeper into crisis, foreign governments are taking notice. American, German, and other European citizens have been urged to leave Bamako on the earliest commercial flights available. But for most Malians, there is no way out. The blockade has trapped them in their own capital. Despite the junta's claims of control, it's Al-Qaeda that holds the power, able to plunge Bamako into darkness at the flick of a switch. Nicholas Hawk, Al Jazeera.
Well, that was depressing. All the way to the end. All right. I got this message from the DSA. Here, let's go here so I can actually read it. And we have amazing DSA member wins across the country with more results still coming in the South. All these individuals. In the Midwest, we have all those individuals. And in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, we have Zoran plus New York and all this, that, and the other. So the DSA seems to be taking credit for Mamdani's win. Which, fine, let them. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care who takes credit. But if the DSA isn't going to then double down and start supporting congressional and state legislative and other city candidates after these wins, then we are going to be cooked, as the kids say. So again, if they can actually claim this, and by saying that they were DSA members versus DSA sponsored or DSA endorsed or DSA supported, that adds a little, because I mean, for instance, the unions could say the same thing. We have an amazing union supporter winning the mayoral race, and it's like, well, yeah, most people who run for office seek union endorsements. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So if DSA wants to lead with that message, then the DSA needs to actually start building the infrastructure, the training, the support systems, and put them in place nationally to actually facilitate further wins. So, Adel Gaming. Okay. I couldn't tell what that icon was, so I had to get my little monocle out to check it out. But yeah, so that's great to know, and that maybe helps answer Simply Steve's question. There is opportunity to build. It's just a question if the leadership of the DSA chooses to do that. All right.
There's little sign of war in this historic.
So, Lebanon, so I always get confused which all countries border Israel. So again, the Gaza Strip and West Bank is where they have been massacring Palestinians this entire time, right? Oh, really? There. But Syria, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, and Lebanon are all bordering Israel. And Israel has been attacking Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. Well, I guess Saudi Arabia doesn't border, but you know what I mean. they have been attacking all these countries every single chance they can get. So, just for some perspective as to why is Lebanon fearing for its safety, it is literally because they are border.
Quarter of Baalbek. This time last year, this ancient city was under attack. Known for its Roman ruins, Baalbek in eastern Lebanon is considered part of Hezbollah's heartland in the Bekaa Valley. Israel launched a war against the group, but nearly a year into a ceasefire, the conflict is not over.
What's happening now isn't short of a war. It's war. What more can we expect to happen?
Israel regularly targets these hills overlooking the city. It says it is hitting strategic infrastructure in an area it describes as Hezbollah's logistical and operational base. Strikes also kill the group's personnel nearly daily. But
Yeah, so Hezbollah is literally... Isn't Hezbollah... Didn't we go through this? Hezbollah is a Lebanese Islamist political party and paramilitary group. Their wing is the Jihad Council, and its political wing is the Loyalty to the Resistance Bloc Party in the Lebanese parliament. They are, once again, an official part of the Lebanese government and military, as it turns out. So, to say that they're targeting Hezbollah and not attacking Lebanon or the Lebanese is just a ridiculous argument in semantics, okay? It's just, it makes no sense. And also, it's coming from Israel. Oh, we're only targeting Hezbollah, and we're only targeting these areas because these are the danger zones. And it's like, no, motherfucker, you're not. You're targeting civilians, you're targeting cities, you are trying to, again, encroach upon lands and places that are not yours, and the world just lets it happen because of World War II and the successful propaganda that is Zionism. It's like a no online bullying icon. Okay. Lebanon just let Hezbollah attack Israel for solidarity for Gaza. Well, and that's the thing. Hezbollah is kind of the more powerful political bloc in Lebanon, and they also control most of the military. So Hezbollah is kind of like in a mix of being part of the government and also part of like trying to take it over. All of which is to say, Israeli aggression is the cause of all of this regardless. So whether or not Hezbollah attacks Israel, it's always going to be in self-defense or in retaliation to something that Israel themselves have done. So, right, yeah. Makes no sense.
Hezbollah's strongholds are also home to hundreds of thousands of people.
There are those who are portraying the situation in Baalbek in a bad light. Especially recently, there is so much talk about targeting Baalbek, and this is scaring people away.
Much has already been destroyed in one of the poorest regions in Lebanon.
Israel is accusing Hezbollah of rearming and also accusing the Lebanese government of dragging its feet in its commitment to disarm the group. In the words of U.S. envoy Tom Barrack, time is running out. Israel is now threatening to increase its military attacks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Israel is threatening aggression. Israel is threatening the offensive. Israel is condemning other countries from having a military while bordering Israel. Like, that's not the way that works. It's kind of like America extrajudicially murdering fishermen off the coast of various Latin American countries and claiming that it's narco-terrorism. By the way, check out the lingerie story. I was actually trying to not point that out because that just happened to be where I paused the video, but you know. Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, and all terror proxies of the IRGC funded by Iran, of course. Ali Khamenei being the head of the snake. Right. And that's the thing. All of these groups are always Iran-funded and always terrorist groups and hostile and this, that, and the other, when it is literally Israel that is committing all of the aggression against all of these countries, which causes these groups to form to protect against Israeli aggression when the countries are too afraid to actually engage in military responses, because that could trigger the United States or Europe backing up Israel. So again, the Cold War only shifted trajectories rather between the United States and Russia. Now it's the Middle East as the proxy for all of these other aggressions and all these other aggressors. Meanwhile, Middle Eastern countries are caught in the middle, having to defend themselves from Western imperialism. It's insane.
For people here, it means living under threat. Hussein Osman was not among those who left when the Israeli army ordered the city's population to flee during the war last year. Like Hezbollah and its supporters, Hussein is questioning the state's decision to negotiate with Israel. With the possibility of renewed conflict,
negotiating with
President
terrorists.
Joseph Aoun said Lebanon has no other choice.
We would support any negotiation that works for the benefit of the resistance, but any negotiation that involves disarming the resistance is not accepted. These weapons protected us and allowed us to stay in our homes.
And that's the point.
People here don't...
That's the point. Countries have the right to self-defend. They absolutely have the right. If any country invades any other country, the invaded country has the full backing of the international law to defend itself by any means necessary from the invader, from the aggressor. And Israel has been the invader and the aggressor every single time. There has not been a single instance in which another country picked a fight with Israel. Not once. Because no other country wants to pick a fight with Israel, because Israel doesn't have anything other countries wants. Even before Israel existed, nobody fucked with Palestine because Palestine didn't fuck with people. They had olives and they had sea trade, and everybody was peachy keen. Zionists start colonizing Palestine, and all of a sudden there's an enemy in every corner and in every single shadow. So, Lebanon.
2 years after the October the 7th attacks on Israel, the BBC has been allowed into northern Gaza by the Israeli...
Immediately with the phrasing, 2 years after the attacks on Israel, the BBC has been allowed back in. Again, they literally cannot stop themselves from doing the propaganda. I immediately want to skip this video because of how propagandized it opened up.
Is Shujaya, a flat landscape of rubble stretching all the way into Gaza City.
This is just a taste of what 2 years of war has done to Gaza.
Nope. Propaganda. This is not war. This is not what happens during war. Cities do not get leveled in war. Not even in World War II or even in World War I, were cities straight up turned into rubble by the enemy militaries for the sake of cruelty and punitive measures. That has never happened. The only time that happens is when you are invading for the sake of slaughter. That's the only time that's ever happened in history. And that's what we're witnessing here. That isn't war. That is destruction. That is wholesale slaughter of a people to conquer them. And then replace the people with your own and in a form of colonization. Which is exactly what we're seeing here. So, the BBC can go fuck itself with this piss poor reporting.
Israel has returned the bodies of 15 more Palestinians that were in its custody. It's in exchange for the body of an Israeli-American soldier that was handed over by Hamas on Tuesday. Hamas has promised to return all remaining captives' bodies under the terms of the ceasefire deal agreed last month. For every captive returned to Israel, Hamas will receive 15 Palestinian bodies.
For every captive returned to Israel, Palestinians will receive 15 bodies. And you want to talk about this being a fair conflict or that Israel is acting in self-defense? Israel has been slaughtering people at a ratio that we can at least assume of 15-1. And those are supposed to be fair terms. Like that there is no reporting about Israel and Gaza that ever once has shown Israel as an innocent victim in any of this. They are the most heinous aggressors on earth, And that is including the fact that America exists, and terrorist organizations exist. Israel has committed more atrocities, more terror, more harm than any terrorist organization could ever hope to. And the only reason why I threw America in there is because they have been causing all sorts of issues, getting into wars, causing 1 million Iraqi deaths, so on and so forth, under the veneer of informing peace, right? Whereas Israel isn't even pretending anymore. They are just saying, we are going to eradicate them off of the face of the earth, and we're proud of it. Little Israel has always had the backing of the US and Europe, and they attacked because their goal is to take over all of the land in that area. They said that it was promised to them 3,000 years ago. And that brings us to these horrors.
Operations are underway to locate the remains of 7 more deceased captives believed to be buried under rubble in Gaza. Now, Hamas is conducting the search operation alongside the Red Cross. The group has warned that the scale of destruction from Israel's war is making it difficult to locate and recover the bodies. Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud joins us from Tel El Hawa, that's in the southern part of Gaza City. So, Hani, there is and there has to be some degree of coordination between Hamas and Israel on this, since Hamas is operating inside Israeli-controlled territory to look for these bodies.
Absolutely, and this is happening through an international mediator here, and by that we mean the International Red Cross Committee of the Red Cross that has been involved heavily since the beginning of the ceasefire. Let's not forget, over the course of the past 2 years, the Red Cross was heavily involved with the release of Palestinians detained in Israeli detention centers, as well as the coordination for the return of many of the bodies. This is not the first time we're seeing deceased bodies of Palestinians returning to the Gaza Strip at the opening month of the genocide over the past 2 years, where
holy shit! Did he actually call it a genocide? Wow. Impressive. Absolutely impressive. Even though it's Al Jazeera even doesn't always call it what it is. And in fact, they've hesitated to call it the genocide. So, good on this guy.
The bodies in the 3 different times where close to 80 to 100 each time bodies were returned. But this time, as part of the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel, the search continues on the ground in areas where the Israeli military not only is controlling but has been subjected to relentless bombardment over the past 2 years, where the vast majority of the buildings in these areas have been destroyed. And literally what we're looking at is bodies of deceased captives are pulled from beneath rubble, collapsed building, a pile of rubble across these areas. Particularly, we're looking at 2 locations in eastern Khan Yunis, as well as the eastern part of Gaza City, namely Shujaiya neighborhood. But this is as per the agreement. The coordination takes place. The search continue in this area. There's one thing that people here talk about most of the time, is the fact that Israeli deceased captives returning from here, they go through the proper testing, they've been identified, their families come to closure, they mourn properly, while Palestinians here receive families who wait for the bodies to return, unable to identify any of the bodies. Of the 285 bodies returned so far, only a handful of them have been identified by their families, and it was through more of a basic, primitive ways of identification, by fragments of their clothing or physical feature. The vast majority have been buried with only numbers on the shroud.
That's literally like giving Holocaust family survivors the prison uniforms that their loved ones died in the gas chambers with the numbers and the barcodes. Or the only proof that might have even been your person is the fact that there was a barcode on their skin from their massacred corpse being handed to you. That's even assuming Israel is even giving back Palestinian bodies, right? Or that they're even giving back the correct body to these families. Again, the cruelty, the malevolence that is Israel is beyond the pall. And And I'm sorry that I'm not like watching and interacting in the stream and I'm like doing and distracting myself, because the only way I can keep myself from getting into a shaking rage is to distract myself just enough so I can focus on hearing it and then reacting to what is being said. But of course, the reaction to what is being said is that everything that Israel is doing is measured malevolence. It's measured cruelty. It's measured terrorism. It's just, it's like with ICE going door to door in America, arresting teachers in front of their students in the beginning of the day in front of everybody. It's about the fear. It is about the terror. It is about making a statement. We hold the power. You do not. Live in fear because you could be next. Disgusting. But that's not all. Israel
For decades, the Israeli settlement project has reshaped the geography and the politics of the occupied West Bank. Now, Israel is preparing to expand even further. The Israeli body responsible for governing the occupied territory is reviewing plans for nearly 2,000 new housing units. More than 1,500 of those are at the earliest stage, what's called deposition, the first step before formal approval and construction.
And there they are, toasting wine or champagne in a boardroom. Also, isn't Netanyahu supposed to be on trial for crimes against humanity in his own fucking country? What? I don't even understand what Netanyahu's even getting away with here. Like, how is he able to get away with all this stuff when he is supposedly under watch and under investigation and under trial? Like, I don't get that. And corruption. Mea culpa. Oh, Adel Gaming was an Israel apologist? I didn't see that. Well, sucks for that. They were there first, though, during the Holocaust. No Muslim nation helped them protest. No, that's not true. What do you mean? Palestine was there first, and Palestine opened their arms to fleeing Holocaust survivors, and instead it turned into a Zionist propaganda colonization movement, which has spread to what we see today. So yeah. Well, that sucks, I guess. It's in the title, for crying out loud. Fuck Israel. Like, there is no ambiguity there whatsoever. There's no gray area. We do not support Israel here, and we will not tolerate defensive Zionism. That's not what we do here.
At the start of this year alone, Israel has advanced more than 28,000 housing units across the West Bank, an all-time record according to the Israeli rights group Peace Now. Many of these new units are not being added to large settlement blocks, but to isolated settlements deep inside the West Bank. The isolated settlements of Etz Ephraim has seen roughly 300 units approved this year alone, more than were built there over the previous decades combined. And earlier this year, Israel approved the long-stalled E1 settlement plan, more than 3,400 housing units that would extend east of the occupied Jerusalem, splitting the West Bank in two and further surrounded the city with a ring of settlements. International law is clear. All Israeli settlements in occupied territory are illegal under the Fourth Geneva Convention.
So then why the fuck is the international courts and community not doing anything about it?
Which prohibits an occupying power from transferring its civilian population into occupied land. The settlements also have real consequences on the ground. More outposts require new roads, more checkpoints, and human rights groups say have been accompanied by rising settler violence. The UN documented more than 750 settler attacks causing injuries or property damage in just the first 6 months of this year, a 13% increase from last year. It's estimated there are around 40,000 empty housing units already inside the existing settlements. But Palestinians say the expansion is not about housing, but changing the map permanently. For Palestinians, every new road and every new outpost is not just a building, but another barrier to sovereignty. And for many in the international community, these developments are steadily closing what remains of the possibility of a two-state solution. Resul Serdar, Al Jazeera.
There's only so much. There's literally only so much I can handle of that. Of hearing time and time and time and time again the crimes that Israel is committing, whether it's the settlements, whether it's assaulting Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza City or wherever else, whether it's the international community shaking its fist and condemning them, but literally doing nothing about it. If you are breaking the law without consequences, no, you're not. That law doesn't exist. That law is not enforceable. It does not serve any other purpose. If you do not suffer consequences for breaking the law, then that law does not exist. Or it doesn't exist for you. And the fact that that is the case in the international legal system is a major fucking problem. Israel is breaking every single rule under the sun, violating genocide, violating human rights, violating war crimes, just violating anything that they possibly can, are being condemned for it, are being called out for it, are being charged for it, and yet nothing is happening. Nothing is being done about it. They are not being held accountable. Again, it's like Trump and his ilk committing crimes, violating the Constitution, ignoring the Supreme Court, and the U.S. Marshals are just doing nothing. Nobody is arresting them. Nobody is holding them accountable. If lawlessness reigns supreme, then there are no laws. We don't have government. We don't have a society. We don't have structures and institutions. What we have is the veneer of law to keep people in check, those without power, those without influence, hold them accountable, and allow those with power and influence and money to reign supreme unchecked. That's authoritarianism. That's empire. That's monarchy. That is literally all those things and everything but name. And the fact that it is the worst groups that keep benefiting from it is not lost on me. Again, if Obama had tried any of this, if Hillary had tried any of this, if Bernie had tried any of this, they'd be in prison for the rest of their lives, if not executed. But Republicans are doing it. The conservative blocs are doing it. All of a sudden, it's okay. And I don't understand that. Where's the accountability? Where's the accountability within your own groups? That's what I'm not understanding. And even then, if there isn't going to be accountability within the own groups, there is always a bigger fish, right? So at what point does the bigger fish be like, yeah, you know what, you have crossed the line? Like, what's the line? And when does the biggest fish actually reveal themselves? Right? And what's the end game? Right? For Israel, it's to occupy the promised land. For America, we don't know yet. We don't know what the end game is, because I don't think they even know what the end game is, other than more power, more wealth, more control. Anyway, we're gonna do
President Trump is leaving open the possibility of U.S. military action in Nigeria as he accused the nation of not stemming violence against Christians there. The president has asked the defense.
Bro, this is why. So, we're murdering fishermen off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia for narco-terrorism. And now we're going to invade Nigeria because it's the 1100s and it's the Crusades? Because Nigerians aren't doing enough to protect Christians? What? Well, that doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even make sense. Oh, you brought up the Cheney and the Iraq War because of... Okay. Yeah, that is good news. It's not international news, but it is good news. And hopefully the DSA runs with that success and helps every candidate across the country build on that momentum. But to this point, so this administration, which touted itself as the president of peace, which we can see where that peace is coming, right? Is now trying to find new and more imaginative excuses to attack, bully, and undermine other countries, now including Nigeria. So sure, why not? Let's hear more about this.
Defense Department to prepare options, that...
No, she was right. Prepare optics, prepare public consent with manufacturing plans. Prepare the plans to manufacture consent of the public. That is exactly what Trump just told the Defense Department to do. So she was right. It was a Freudian slip, but she is absolutely right about what's going to happen.
Could include troops on the ground or airstrikes. The situation on the ground, however, is far from straightforward. Violence in Nigeria does affect Christians, but also Muslims, and is driven by religious,
Nigerians.
ethnic, and...
The violence in Nigeria affects Nigerians. Who the fuck cares what their religion is? I'm going to level with you. I'm going to seriously level with you. Religion, organized religion, is the bane of human existence, second only to capitalism. Capitalism is killing us right now. It is killing us in every way imaginable. Religion is neck and neck. Muslims are this, Christians are that, the Jews are this, the Confucians are that. This religious warfare, this religious crusades that just never fucking stop, need to. And to be a sovereign head of state and even talk about religion as your justification to engage militarily or to engage in sort of military actions is insane. This is not the Dark Ages. He is not the Pope. This is not the Crusades. God does not will it. I can assure you. Nowhere in this Bible does it say, if it's convenient, and your polling numbers are struggling and you're an absolute twat waffle, go ahead and invade neighboring countries in the name of the Lord, so that you can gain favor with the people. Nowhere in this Bible, in any version of this Bible, does it say that. I hope I just didn't damage some pages here. I'm so sick of religious warfare, of religious clashing like that. Honestly, you know what? Go ahead and cancel me. But I think religion needs to literally stop being organized. Whenever religious people gather in groups, it becomes a fucking what did I just call it? Not the Inquisition. Now the Inquisition's in my head. Crusade. That's what it is. When groups of religious people form, they immediately look for a crusade. To fight in a crusade. Like, you want to worry about, like, terrorist grouping together, or MS-13, or some of these other terrorist organizations forming groups to impact society. How about religious people going on zealot crusades? How about that? That's what we really need to stop.
Resource-based tensions in that country. Joining me now, Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria GPS on CNN. He also has a new book, Age of Revolutions, releases in paperback tomorrow.
Can you stop promoting people? Can you just really stop promoting people as the justification for interviewing them about a real crisis that is happening to real people in a real country on planet fucking Earth? Speaking of capitalism, Fustercluck. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with right now. Absolutely. Thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream.
They're always free. You're so good at just making us understand what's happening globally. Let's talk about what's happening with Trump in Nigeria. He's suddenly suggesting potentially putting troops on the ground or airstrikes. He's already threatened strikes inside Venezuela, and we've been seeing the multitude of strikes on boats in international waters, killing more than a dozen people. For a guy who is insisting...
No, killing more than a dozen fishermen Innocent people. Lady, the phrasing matters. The context fucking matters. Everything else is propaganda.
He deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping wars. How do you read what's happening now?
It seems very impulsive and emotional. He possibly saw something on TV. It is very strange. The Nigerian situation is exactly as you said, Sarah, very complicated. A lot of the violence people have heard about in Nigeria, Boko Haram, that terror group that took those school children we all remember, that was mostly Muslim on Muslim violence. Those are jihadi groups often taking, killing Muslims, not in all cases, but in many of them. There is Muslim Christian violence, as you say, some of it is based on farmers versus goat herders. The current president, Tinubu, has actually been trying his best to diffuse that kind of violence, and is himself an exemplary example of Nigeria's kind of multi-religious tradition. He is Muslim, the president of Nigeria. He's married to a Christian woman who is an ordained minister. And he often talks about how that marriage is part of what he's trying to do. Nigeria is 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. So it's an odd place for President Trump to interject himself, particularly militarily. I suspect, like many of President Trump's, emotional outbursts, that will not actually lead to military action. That could set off a kind of tinderbox in Nigeria. But we just have to wait and see. With President Trump, it's often you're trying to mind read this one man.
Yeah.
The good news is he's right. Trump is an emotional, petulant child. However, and I have to emphasize, this emotionally petulant fucking child throwing tantrums every other day, every other hour, has been actively following through on these threats lately, namely with Colombia and Venezuela. So Nigeria, yeah, it's a tinderbox, but is it a tinderbox that'll set off sparks throughout all of Africa? Will Europe get involved? Will China get involved? Or will they sit back on their laurels like they are with Venezuela and Colombia? The thing is, Hitler invaded Austria and Hungary and annexed them to Germany, and everybody held their breath and said, all right, I guess we'll leave that alone. And then when Hitler turned his attention to Poland, that's when everybody's like, shit, I guess that's one step too far. So are we literally in that stage of the game where Hitler is beginning to invade different countries to see what they can get away with? Because as it seems, Israel is getting away with literally murder, literally genocide in the Middle East, and is America's proxy or vice versa. And now America is extending its tendrils into Latin America, seeing how much they can get away with in the international community. And now they're going to start poking at Africa. Like there is no question that is what's about to happen next. How aggressively or how assertively it ends up happening remains to be seen. But I have no doubt in my mind that there is going to be a presence in Africa from this administration trying to flex and see what it can get away with. And all of this to show strength, because we all know that strength is shown by mercilessly attacking weaker people.
Access to the internet's been restored in Tanzania after a several-day shutdown after protests following the re-election of the country's president Samia Suluhu Hassan. She's insisted the election was free and fair after being declared to have won 98% of the vote. People in Tanzania have been sharing images of dead bodies strewn on the streets after the...
How? If you got 98% of the vote, if you legitimately got 98% of the vote, people wouldn't be protesting in the streets, resulting in bodies littering them. That's just not how that fucking works. And then, right, 98%. If, again... Nobody, I don't even think FDR got 98% of the vote. What was the highest vote percentage of a president in history? Here's Wikipedia. So, George Washington. That was it. 100%. Because he was the one. He was the only guy. He fought in the Revolutionary War. He ran the Revolutionary War, etc. at Alia, and he got it. Right? Popular vote, 72%, 80%. Which somehow had a weird split with the Electoral College. And then it started being much more 50-50. Much more 50-50. With Warren G. Harding getting 60% as an outlier. And then FDR. FDR, the president who the 25th Amendment, no, the 22nd Amendment was written for, himself didn't even get an overwhelming majority of the popular vote, just the college. And especially in 1936, he got damn near 99%. He got 98.49%. So in American history, there has been one president one time that got 98% of the Electoral College. That's just the college, but not the popular vote. And the only time somebody's gotten that much of the popular vote was literally in the earliest years of the American democracy, where the founders were those that got that kind of support. James Monroe, George Washington. And from that point forward, popular support peaked at around 60%. And then that was it. 60% of the popular vote. Peaking at Lyndon B. Johnson was 61.05%. So, yeah. That is Reagan, apparently not, 1984. 58.7 was not it might have been a blowout, but with 97% of the Electoral College, yes, but not with the popular vote. Because there was a margin problem there. Anyway, the fact of the matter is 98% of a Democratic elected popular vote would not result in nationwide protests, especially that got to the levels of violence and death.
Violence that came after the election last week. She has blamed outsiders for the unrest that followed the election. Opposition parties claim hundreds of people died during protests, and that figure, the government says, is exaggerated. Let's speak to our Africa correspondent, Barbara Plett-Usher, who's on the border between Kenya and Tanzania. And Barbara, what picture is emerging of the violence that came after that presidential election?
Well, the pictures are emerging very slowly after the internet had been cut off for 5 or 6 days. We did have a human rights group in Kenya at the weekend which showed images, footage that it said came from Tanzania, and that was absolutely shocking. It showed bodies piled in the streets, and apparently at one of the hospitals. We weren't able to verify that, but if more of those kinds of images come out, then it seems likely that this issue, the election, the unrest over the election will continue in some form. We spoke to a human rights lawyer yesterday who's based in Tanzania, and he said people are in mourning. They've lost loved ones. Some of them they are not able to bury because of the situation. Some of them they're not able to find. So that is what's going to be the immediate preoccupation now that things seem to be returning more to normal. But he also said that the protests would continue, or resistance would continue, because he said the government had turned its guns on them. Now, as you said, the authorities have said these are exaggerated claims. They said they were responding to pockets of criminal activity, that their response was reasonable and necessary. But we shall see over the next weeks how the Tanzanian people decide or evaluate what's happened.
And the big question...
Yeah. It is necessary and reasonable for a government, any government, to turn live ammunition on their citizens who are protesting the actions of the government. The only governments who say that are authoritarian regimes, dictatorships, monarchies, empires, and fascist regimes. Democracies don't do that, don't say that, because again, democracies don't do that. Period. They just don't do that. And any country which engages in sanctioned violence against their civilian population, is no longer a democracy. It is a failed state. It is a rogue nation. It is a nation of autocrats and authoritarians and this, that, and the other. And America has stopped being a democracy for quite some time because every single time we protest, we are met with violence, violent crackdowns with illegal tear gas being used against civilians, which is a violation of international law. But every country apparently uses tear gas against their civilian population despite that. So, look at the lady doing all of that killing. Samia Suluhu Hassan. This lady right here. She assumed office in 2021. And then again in 2025. She's been in government for quite a bit. She's a boomer. 1965. 1960. Definitely makes her a boomer. And Hafti is a young stallion, apparently, compared to her. But this lady looks just like your normal grandma, except she is turning around and just massacring everyone that her people. She's massacring her people for having the audacity to claim that she rigged and stole an election. Shocking.
Question, Barbara, how a presidential candidate who claims to have won 98% of the vote has faced such protests and unrest?
It is a crucial question, isn't it? Especially because she's claiming that she's got more than double, nearly triple the number of votes that her predecessor got. Also that there had been reports of many of the polling stations being nearly empty. As Southern African election monitors said, in some of the polling stations there were more police than voters. Also, their
polling stations had more police than voters. Now, mark my words, America. The longer this government shutdown lasts, the more ICE gets funded, the more trained agents there are, and the more opportunities Trump has to ignore Supreme Court orders to not deploy the National Guard to our cities. The longer these four things happen, and the longer dissent starts getting threatened by this administration, and we start seeing victims of these actions being plastered in the news and crucified, the sooner we are going to see this midterm election with more police, military, and or ICE agents at our polling locations, especially in major cities. And I am willing to even say that because there has been a blue sweep during this past election with Zoran Mamdani, the Virginia governor, New Jersey governor becoming Democrats, I would not be surprised at all if this administration starts cracking down on dissent and starts truly manipulating the electoral process directly. So,
their evaluation was that most people had not been able to exercise their democratic will because of censorship, because of a crackdown on the opposition. I think the conclusion to draw from that, and what many people might be thinking, is that these numbers are exaggerated, that the president clearly wanted an emphatic win. Now, analysts say that she needed to have an emphatic win because of she was facing dissent in her party. She took over from the previous president when he died in 2021, and they say that she was opposed by his powerful allies, especially because she's a woman. That may or may not be the case, but it will remain to be seen if she can convince Tanzanians that she is in fact a legitimate leader.
Barbara, thank you very much. Barbara,
evidently not.
On the Kenyan border with.
Right, it is that I pointed that out too. That he was very young compared to her. But yeah, just the sheer amount of corruption that is happening in Tanzania and how it is being emulated in other countries, to include the United States of America.
Now, it is a huge day for President Trump's tariff policy. The Supreme Court is currently hearing arguments over the legality of the way the trade tariffs were imposed. And according to the president himself, the stakes could not be higher. Well, the case centers around whether he has the authority to impose sweeping tariffs on imports under a...
He literally fucking doesn't. According to the Constitution, he doesn't.
Law designed for use during a national emergency. So let's get the thoughts of Justin Wolfers, Professor of Economics at the University of Michigan. And Justin, great to have you on the program again. This is going to be a hugely significant decision, isn't it?
But not any more hugely significant than any of the other Supreme Court decisions that have told Trump to stop. Stop deploying the Guard into cities. Stop terrorizing immigrants. Stop deporting people after you kidnap them and trafficking them to other countries. You need to enforce due process. Stop arresting protesters. You can't make dissent illegal. You can't make criticism against you illegal. What was another Supreme Court? Like there have been so many. You can't fire people during the shutdown. You can't just arbitrarily fire people. How many of the people that he has fired did he have to rehire? The list, that's just off the top of my head. And I think that was just in the past few months, if not weeks. So, hugely significant Supreme Court ruling that is going to get ignored? Right,
very big day, and if you love tariffs, if you hate tariffs, it's an emotional roller coaster.
It is unclear, even if Donald Trump loses, whether he'll actually abide by the decision. But let's put that to one side. Give me your assessment of the impact that tariffs have had there in the US and elsewhere.
I think actually there's two sets of impacts. One is the direct one, which is tariffs raise costs. Those higher costs lead to lower profits for American businesses, or when they pass them on, higher prices for American consumers. That's the fairly direct thing. The second thing may be even larger, which is that America has shown itself to be a combative and often unwilling trading partner, an unreliable trading partner, and it's sort of tipped the bucket on the global trading system. And so you're seeing countries all around the world reorganizing, looking for more stable friends, and America's reputation, quite sadly, has never been lower among folks who otherwise would be our allies.
End of report. End of message. This is how we are truly seen across the globe. And of course that doesn't matter because our news would have us believing that we are strong, powerful, and feared because Trump says so. And because they don't want to be censored by the administration and having ICE agents or the military deployed to Fox News maybe not Fox News, but MSNBC headquarters during a broadcast and having the reporters arrested on air, right? It's just insane to me how willing our various institutions are to capitulate to even the threat of power than do their due diligence as is protected by the Constitution and resist the threats from power. So, we are halfway through the stream and a little bit more than halfway through our video list. I guess I kind of zipped through some of these. Not intentionally, but there's just not much more to say. I mean, especially with this guy, there is not that much more to say after that. So,
anger on the streets of Michoacan on Monday as hundreds of people marched towards the government palace, protesting the murder of the mayor of Uruapan, Carlos Manso. They blame the government and more broadly the political party Morena for the killing. Since taking office in 2024, the mayor had publicly warned of the growing insecurity in the region, demanding the federal government do more to stem the influence of organized crime in the state. In her morning press conference, President Claudia Sheinbaum shot back at those blaming her government for failing to protect Manso.
There are those who want militarization and war, but that didn't work. In fact, it's what led to the violence. The drug war is what got us into this situation that we are now trying to fix.
State prosecutors said 2 suspects had been detained and 1 had been killed, but fell short of naming a specific group responsible for the attack.
We are working so that those responsible face justice. Even if the material author of this crime was killed, we know organized crime was behind this murder.
At least 5 criminal organizations operate in the state of Michoacán. Among them, the cartel Jalisco New Generation, which the U.S. recently designated as a terrorist organization. The killing comes at a time when the Mexican government is under increased pressure to show it is curbing violence by organized crime. Security continues to be the main concern for Mexicans across the country, while pressure from the United States and threats that they will directly strike one of the Mexican cartels looms large over Claudia Sheinbaum's government.
See, and this is the part of Al Jazeera that also upsets me. Claudia Sheinbaum's government is not being overshadowed by the cartels and the drug violence. That was already happening before she got there. She's been in power, maybe going on 1 year. 1 year, depending on how you spend that year, is not enough time to go after organized criminal elements. And like she said, if you use a military response to organized crime and you don't know which of your detachments are already infiltrated by the cartels, then you cannot effectively root out the threat because you might just be giving away your plans, right? So first, she would have to make sure that her military and her police are actually what they say they are, which is loyal to the country, right? Loyal to the people. And once you've established that, then you can start doing plans, right? But even then, right? Unless it is going to be a national, like a nationwide effort, you run the risk of these cartels getting tipped off and just going underground, hiding for a few weeks and months, and then coming back more violent than ever. She is 100% correct. Which is why the way to actually combat the cartels is to create a more prosperous Mexico, which is exactly what Claudia is doing by creating universal healthcare programs and improving housing affordability and increasing wages. The things that we reported on 2 or 3, 4 weeks ago. Her government is fighting back against the cartels by creating a better Mexico for Mexicans. That's how you do it. And that is what she is doing. We have a long video towards the end. Yeah, I guess we're just going to have to watch the whole thing then. Morena is the left-wing party. These are the right-wingers trying to blame Claudia. The right-wingers let the cartels go wild, and now they can blame Claudia, who has been in charge for a year. No, and that's the thing, right? You have right-wingers in government who actually allow the government to fail or cause problems that the government has to solve so that they can campaign on those problems, get into power, and then exacerbate everything so that they can maintain power. It's a stupid playbook that constantly works because governments are afraid to hold those conservative groups accountable for literally destabilizing society. I don't understand it. I truly do not understand how these things continue to happen scot-free when there are laws, when there are institutions, when there are these infrastructures in place to curb that kind of behavior. And not just in Mexico, but in every government.
Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau said on X that the U.S. was ready to cooperate to, as he put it, wipe out organized crime on both sides of the border. And the public's anger at the mayor's murder isn't expected to ease anytime soon, with further protests planned across the state. Julia Galliano, Al Jazeera, Mexico City.
Don't miss out.
And of course, it's a great opportunity for America to beat its chest, say that we're going to go after against narco-terrorists in their ongoing search for a new never-ending war. Despicable.
Another crisis in a relationship under strain. Peru's foreign minister announced his country is cutting diplomatic ties with Mexico after it granted asylum to former minister Betsy Chavez, who faces charges of rebellion.
In response to this unfriendly act, and considering the repeated interventions in Peru's internal affairs by both the current and former Mexican presidents, the Peruvian government has decided today to break off diplomatic relations with Mexico.
Chavez is accused of helping then-leftist President Pedro Castillo in his failed attempt to dissolve Congress and declare a state of emergency as legislators prepared to impeach him. The military refused to back him and he was arrested within hours. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum criticized Peru's decision on Tuesday.
From our perspective, it's completely out of proportion, but it's a decision they've chosen to make.
Under Sheinbaum and previous President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, Mexico has sided with Castillo, calling his removal a coup and questioning the legitimacy of President Dina Boluarte, who followed him. It also granted asylum to Castillo's family and aides, a move Peru considers a blatant interference in its internal affairs.
They have portrayed the authors of the coup attempt as victims, when in reality Peruvians live and want to continue living in democracy, as recognized by all countries in the world, with the sole and lonely exception of Mexico.
Yet Mexico insists its decision was not political, but based on law and evidence.
This is in keeping with Mexico's long tradition of granting diplomatic and political asylum, a practice deeply rooted in our history, our principles, and in strict adherence to international law.
Peru's diplomatic break with Mexico comes amid an ongoing crisis at home. Last month, Congress ousted President Dina Boluarte, and her successor, José Gerí, has struggled to contain growing protests and rebuild trust in a political class many Peruvians see as corrupt and out of touch. Alessandro Ampietti, Al Jazeera.
So, the right-wingers are taking over Peru. Remember, this is the government that declared martial law for 30 days. Yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying. The guy that... But although that is true, it is also true that the guy that they are giving asylum to in Mexico actually tried to commit a coup d'etat against his own country and tried to dissolve Congress to avoid being impeached. And that's the guy that they are giving asylum to. Like, that definitely seems... Well, I'm basing... Okay, and then I don't know enough about this, because the way Al Jazeera just reported this is that the former president was being impeached, and then he tried to play some games to avoid being impeached and had a failed coup. So maybe we need to have a video to cover that, because evidently this reporting is heavily slanted in a way to make that guy look like the bad guy. So I'm just pointing out that the way this was, Al Jazeera reported it, it made the PM was the bad guy. They don't explain the context. Well, they don't explain the context, and that doesn't help me either. And I genuinely don't know enough about what's going on in Peru to really talk about it with any sort of authority other than what's being presented. So if you can find another video, a different video discussing the former PM of Peru, we can absolutely watch it. We will have time. Now, I want to point out this title. U.S. Navy deployment to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is an American territory. Why are we deploying to an American territory? Again, why are we deploying to American cities? We should not be deploying to American places. That's not a deployment. That is an invasion. That is martial law. That is military law. And those are things that are not indicative of a thriving democracy.
Pablo Soto can usually be found here on the side of the road, waiting and hoping for Puerto Rico's economic boom to begin.
We managed to scrape together enough to eat because things aren't good. The situation is dire. We're just barely surviving here.
He and many of those around the newly reopened Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Ceiba have been hoping the ships and planes bringing nearly 15,000 American troops to destinations in and around Puerto Rico would bring an infusion of cash. But he's still waiting. Austin Oriano was waiting too. There were once 16 bars and dozens of restaurants in this neighborhood before the base closed. Now he owns one of 2 bars that remain. The Aviator Sports Bar, named for the American naval pilots who no longer come here. There are new F-35 fighter jets on the tarmac at the base, but few new customers.
We're not seeing the economic results of the military's presence yet, as we did years ago. When they were here, there were houses for rent and businesses everywhere were always full. But for now, we haven't seen the economic impact of the base. Let's hope we do.
Following protests over the American military presence here around the turn of the century, the U.S. closed several bases, including Roosevelt Roads, in 2004. As thousands of troops and their families left Puerto Rico, they left behind an economic gap that has never been filled. This was once the center
that has never been filled by design, because Puerto Rico is not allowed to self-determine. Even though it's a territory, it's not an official state. But there's like an American council with business leaders on that board that determine Puerto Rico's future and economics and domestic policies, which are doing nothing but doing the same gentrification nonsense, the same capitalist grab and extract that has been plaguing every other country in the world that capitalism has touched. We, Americans, are doing it to ourselves in Puerto Rico by not allowing Puerto Ricans to self-regulate their own economies, their own needs, their own domestic policies. And again, Al Jazeera does not seem to be interested in talking about that. Why is Al Jazeera so hit or miss? Like, why can't you just stay based 100% of the time?
Of the town of Punta Cascajo, home to the Roosevelt Roads military housing complex, including that house behind the trees. And the town came with water, power, all the amenities. But since the military left here 2 decades ago, it's become a ghost town. The high school is abandoned, an open-air cave for Caribbean bats. A series of economic hits over the past 2 decades, the expiration of tax breaks for manufacturers, Hurricanes Maria in 2017 and Fiona in 2022, and the loss of the bases have left Puerto Rico mired in an economic depression since 2006. Will the military presence help?
In the short term, it may generate some economic activity. Wartime economies generally foster some kind of dynamism. But that's short term. In the medium term, Puerto Rico will return to its situation, its limitations, its problems, and all the excitement generated by military activity in Puerto Rico in the short term will disappear.
With more troops.
Correct. Why aren't you talking about why Puerto Rico hasn't been able to recover economically? Why are we not talking about that?
On the way, Puerto Ricans continue to wait for mainland money to come in. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Ceiba, Puerto Rico.
You know, for the United States of America, acting and behaving like an actual empire, and is an empire in all but name, we are the shittiest empires. Like, we are the shittiest empire in all of history. You know what Genghis Khan did when he conquered Asia? As a Mongol chieftain from the steppes of Mongolia who had nothing to his name, no leadership, no experience with nation building or any of that. You know what he did, Genghis Khan, after murdering and marauding the entire continent of Asia and turning around at the Alps at the 11th hour? He built a nation. He invested in the places that he conquered. He didn't raise them. He demanded tributes. And then in turn, he provided sanctuary and freedoms and customs and courtesies. He built nation. He supported the territories that he conquered. You know what the Romans did for 1,000 years? They conquered places and they integrated them into Roman society. Not as Romans. The only people who could have Roman citizenship were people literally from Rome. Everybody else had different types of citizenship, which allowed them to travel freely within the empire. And guess what? They were treated well, they paid their taxes, and they were able to integrate within society. To include conquered Germanic tribes. They got to serve in the military for 5 to 20 years, and based on their service, they get to, guess what? Be accepted Roman citizens, or the equivalent thereof. Empires integrate their territories into the empire. There might be distinction between who is a true imperial and who isn't, but there is still that integration. America just plunders. That's it. The only thing America has done in its entire empirical history has been plundering, genocide, and more plundering. That's it. And that's, one, not sustainable, and two, defeats the Why would you take over that territory? Why would you integrate that territory into your protected assets if you're not going to invest in it? If you're not going to support it? If you're not going to help it? Cut it loose. But no, it's about the more. It's about control. It's about saying we have Puerto Rico when and if we choose to use it. And that's absolutely insane. Right, and after all of the killing of the indigenous people, Spain treated PR better and gave Puerto Rico a lot more autonomy than the U.S. Spain still grants citizenship to anyone from Latin America who moves there, including Puerto Ricans. And that's... And Spain isn't even close to being an empire anymore. Like, not even a little bit. Spanish influence is global. Sure, we can argue that, right? That's certainly a valid thing to say. But Spain, the empire, is no longer. And they are treating their former colonies better than we are treating our current colonies. Speaking of,
to a new U.S. strike on a boat allegedly smuggling drugs in the Caribbean, as President Trump also threatened military action against Nigeria. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is tracking this for us. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Michael. Well, President Trump has been escalating his threats against Venezuela and asked point blank if the U.S. is going to go to war with Venezuela. The president said he doubts it, but then he also refused to rule out land strikes there. The president has been expanding his campaign against drug cartels, conducting 15 strikes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific since early September, killing 64 people in all. Now, these strikes are targeting boats that the U.S. alleges are smuggling drugs, but the administration still has not provided any evidence of any crimes. The Pentagon is also surging firepower to the region, the USS Gerald Ford and its strike group on its way to the Caribbean now, and Trump claims that the alleged drug trafficking is being orchestrated by Venezuela's authoritarian leader Nicolas Maduro, and Trump has even authorized covert
authoritarian leader? Dude, he is... Reporting, journalism, the free press is there so you don't just parrot the power's talking points, right? The authoritarian in power's talking points. Maduro is not an authoritarian dictator. He is socialist. Literally socialist. I fucking can't with our news at all. Yeah, Puerto Ricans had representation in the Spanish Parliament, and they don't even have representation in America. Right. I don't even think Puerto Ricans are eligible to vote for president, right? So, let alone have members of Congress or Senate or any of that, right?
Inside the country. Now, in return, Venezuela says President Trump is seeking regime change, but asked if he thinks Maduro's days are numbered, Trump says, I think so. Yeah. Michael?
And Mary, the president is now threatening Nigeria as well.
Yeah, Michael, the president.
This is why football players should not be
Nigeria,
in
saying the U.S.
journalism.
Go in,
what
quote,
the fuck?
Guns a-blazing, and threatening to stop all aid after accusing Nigeria's government of allowing the killing of Christians. Secretary Hegseth says the Defense Department is now preparing for action. Now, the threats, though, are sparking confusion and fear. Experts say violence in the country has impacted Nigerians broadly, regardless of religion. But asked last night if he could envision U.S. boots on the ground, President Trump told reporters that he wasn't ruling it out, saying, quote, could be. Michael?
As you said, it affects everyone regardless of religion. Mary, thank you so much.
That was the most...
Tonight.
That was the most propaganda... I mean, I get it. There aren't very many sources that we can even pull from to even get information about what this administration is doing without it being creators losing their shit for 15 minutes, right? There is no objective reporting, right? There is none. Because either it's a creator going batshit or it's the MSM spewing propaganda. And even if it's foreign news networks, you can't even trust them to be objective in their reporting because even Al Jazeera has nothing... Even Al Jazeera tends to skew in favor of Western imperialism when it comes to Latin American reporting, which is insane. I don't understand that at all. Latin America is just as vulnerable as Africa, which is just as vulnerable as the Middle East when it comes to being reported upon. So why would you parrot propaganda when it comes to Latin American reporting and instead of the kind of reporting that you do for Africa and most of the time the Middle East? I don't get that. Right, even Mamdani called Maduro a dictator because that was politically expedient, which is another reason why I'm not that excited that Mamdani won. I'm more excited about the possibility of momentum that can stem from his winning. It is better in Arabic when they speak on their English channel. It's very different. Clearly very different because they are clearly speaking to the propagandized English-speaking population of Earth. Unfortunately, okay, so hold on a second. We'll duplicate this. So, Al Jazeera, Arabic, Peru, 2025.
Tonight, President Trump...
So that's all Al Jazeera English. I can't even find Al Jazeera Arabic. All right, let's try this. Al Jazeera Arabic. All right, subscribe. So let's start with that. Maybe now... Oh, great, I don't understand any of this. Well, that's a problem. There isn't even a hint. Okay, so this clearly has to do with Gaza. And then the closed captions is also in Arabic. So yeah, this isn't going to work. I just did. Auto translate. This is going to be rough, isn't it?
يمثل هذا الخط الأصفر حدود الانسحاب الأولي لجيش الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وفقا لاتفاق وقف إطلاق النار الوارد في خطة الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب. تشير التقارير الإسرائيلية إلى
Okay, that does seem to be working. Okay, but I will not be able to read any of the like I do not know what any of this means. And I wouldn't even know how to determine that they're talking about Peru other than if that, like, happens to... Like, that's just not going to work. So, Ari, do you actually know Arabic? Because, I will enlist your support, brother. Yeah, you can work with Anna to make these playlists, especially if it'll be better, because you can the translation seems to be pretty good, actually. Yeah. Cartels.
Tonight, President Trump's war on drugs potentially expanding after U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats near Venezuela. The Trump administration has now begun detailed planning to send U.S. troops and intelligence officers to Mexico to target drug cartels with drone strikes. For current and former U.S. officials familiar with the effort tell NBC News. A deployment is not imminent, they say, and it comes after the U.S. says it killed 64 people on boats smuggling drugs to the United States. Overnight, President Trump was asked about potential U.S. land strikes against cartels in Venezuela.
How can I answer a question like that? Supposing there were, would I say that to you?
The boat strikes have sparked criticism from lawmakers questioning their legality. The Trump administration considers Venezuela's authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro, as illegitimate and a narco.
How many more times are... This is NBC now. Every single U.S. network is calling Maduro an authoritarian dictator. Are you fucking serious? All right. This is batshit insane.
أعلنت السلطات القضائية.
Well, hold up there, lady. Don't just dive into that. We need closed caption. Oh, here we go.
القضائية في جمهورية بيرو فتح تحقيق جنائي رسمي ضد جندي إسرائيلي بتهمة ارتكاب جرائم حرب في قطاع غزة.
Okay, but this has nothing to do with the prime minister. This is the a war criminal from like an Israeli soldier. That being said, Ari, maybe and maybe this is my fault for not asking more questions about my viewers. Ari, are you in the Eastern time zone? And if not, which time zone are you in? And would you be willing to help us find videos that are pertinent to some of the things that are not being discussed correctly by the English-speaking versions? And if you're even open to that, you can go ahead and DM me. Like, you don't have to put that in chat. You can DM me or DM Anna, since you'll be working with Anna to do that. But, yeah, because we want to report the truth, or as close to the truth as we're likely to get. Anyway, 2 left-leaning news networks keep calling Maduro an authoritarian dictator. And you know what? What does Google fucking say? So Nicolas Maduro, this guy, is widely considered... I give up then. We actually did cover the Peruvian president who instituted a state of emergency to combat violence. But that's okay. We'll get back to the working together part in a second. None of this right here. Maduro is widely considered a dictator, leading of an authoritarian government characterized by all these things. Between 2013 and 2023, dropped 42 places in the Press Freedom Index, and according to estimations by the United Nations, under Maduro's admin, more than 20,000 people have been subjected to extrajudicial killings, and 7 million Venezuelans have been forced to flee the country. So 30 million to 28 million. 30 million, 28 million. 30, 28. So clearly, autistic folks with a deep knowledge of Peruvian history and Nicolas Maduro have not updated this Wikipedia page at all, because this is just blatantly wrong. Like, this whole paragraph is just straight up propaganda. That is just straight up propaganda. Wow. I don't think Al Jazeera Arabic even commented on this specific issue. This is all I see about Peru. And that could be part of the problem too, is that Al Jazeera English, being the more popular version, covers more things because more people watch it and listen to it and whatever else. But then there comes the bias, because you still got to make sure you make your money by selling clicks and views and everything else. They don't mention that the U.S. imposed sanctions in 2017 to 18 that killed 40,000 people in the first year alone, according to a Columbia study. Right, like, that's the thing. The whole argument that Maduro is a dictator is just U.S.-bred propaganda.
Terrorist. The president was pressed overnight if the U.S. would go to war with Venezuela.
I doubt it. I don't think so, but they've been treating us very badly, not only on drugs. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country that we didn't want, people from prisons.
Yeah, hundreds of, again, 30 million to 28 million. 7 million people fled. Hundreds of thousands were dumped into America. Like, that's, if that were true, the population of Venezuela would be, well, 23 million or less. Like, that's just not how that fucking works. The main difference I see is that, for example, on Al Jazeera Arabic, they say the occupation, while in English, they say IDF. No, and that's true. Maybe when it comes to Middle Eastern reporting, the Al Jazeera Arabic is a little bit harder hitting because it's literally home. And whereas for Al Jazeera English, it's still the same network, the same agency, but there's a little bit of separation. Which also kills me, though, because they have lost dozens of journalists to Israeli terrorism in Palestine, and yet still give the kids gloves when reporting on Israel. Like, not the kids gloves, but don't always report as harshly or as strongly as they should. And many gang members left and asked for political asylum in the U.S. That's why we have Tren de Aragua. Well, and that just goes back to the point that all of the propaganda is self-created prophecy, right? Again, the asylum seekers in America being granted asylum and then doing the gang stuff from a position of having asylum. Like, anyway.
And Trump ordering Pentagon officials to prepare for action in Nigeria.
They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
Defense officials tell NBC News the early planning for any military operation focuses on precision drone strikes targeting the leadership of U.S.-designated terror group Boko Haram, though the U.S. military may take no action at all. Tom?
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories.
I need to take a quick break. I've been drinking a lot of water today. My sleeping patterns haven't been improving, and neither has my work situation. So I've been trying to drink more water to make up for that. But that's the problem with hydration. So we're gonna do this real quick. And All right. It's been a while since I danced on stream, right? But anyway, I'm back. Sorry for that. And what do we got going on in here? Al Jazeera Arabic has 22.1 subs, while English has 16.8. So Arabic is more popular and seems to be their main focus. And yet they still made the decision to focus less on Peru and Arabic than in English. Yeah, so, that's the thing, right? We can't control what other news networks do, but that's the point. It's frustrating because these networks are our lifeline. They are our outlet to what is happening in the world or at home. And then they just lie to us. They manipulate us and spread propaganda instead of telling it in an objective manner. And I'm not saying they must tell the unequivocal truth, right? Like, because there's always going to be bias in how you present something. But can you at least be objective? Like, if you're going to just say President Maduro, the leader of Venezuela. You don't need to say authoritarian dictator, because that is subjective. And the only people that are subjecting themselves to that belief are Western imperialists. So, they never explain the context. Anyone from Venezuela and Cuba is easily granted asylum because the U.S. is so anti-communist, criminals take advantage of that. That's not the case with most countries, right? So, it just... A lot of fuckery, a lot of the time, for a lot of different reasons. Let's see. All right, we got an hour now. We'll do the remaining short videos that we have. I would like to end with the Chinese space station, though. But see, I don't know if I don't think we need to go through the whole 17 minutes of it, but we'll see. So first, Prince Andrew getting his comeuppance.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, to give evidence in the United States about his former friend, the late convicted paedophile
Formerly
Jeffrey
Prince
Epstein,
Andrew?
or victims of...
Is Prince Andrew's new name this symbol? the Illuminati symbol?
Epstein, as well as several members of Congress, have called for the former prince to speak to the authorities to tell them exactly what he knew and when. Well, Andrew, who's now been stripped of all royal titles, has always denied any personal wrongdoing. John Sudworth has the latest on that.
Following his history-making announcement, photographers captured the first glimpse of King Charles driving on his Sandringham estate, while for now his younger brother remains here at Windsor's Royal Lodge, the home he's soon to lose, along with all his titles. But far from drawing a line in the US, it's led to renewed calls for Andrew to reveal all he knows about his friend and convicted paedophile, the late Jeffrey Epstein, and to make good on the palace claim that its sympathies lie with survivors of abuse.
Words without action are really meaningless, so I would want to see some action on his part to back up what he said. He contends that he had no involvement. And so I think that a lot of us are curious as to why he's unwilling to cooperate and be questioned about his involvement with Epstein. If he has nothing to hide, then why is he hiding?
Newly unveiled...
So, on the one point, 1000% agree. If there's nothing to hide, why are you hiding? On the other point, the criminal justice system, especially against people like you and me, regular folk, it doesn't matter if you are innocent. If you agree to questioning, they will find ways to confuse your testimony so that you look guilty. And that has been proven time and time again. Do not talk to the police without a lawyer present. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not offer anything to the prosecution. Exercise your right to remain silent, right? I want to emphasize for the context, specifically the context that for people, the criminal justice system is a weapon of mass destruction. But for pieces of garbage like this, highfalutin, powerful, wealthy individuals, if they are truly innocent, they will be on every single news network. They will be on getting polygraph tested. They will be doing interviews in the courtroom proving their innocence because it's a PR stunt for them. It gives them that much more credibility. If they aren't doing that, if they are refusing to aid and help and testify, it's because they've done it. And that has been universally true every single time. Like, that has never not once been true. We have never falsely convicted a rich and powerful person. We have never, ever, ever done that in the history of ever. He was just stripped of all of his titles. Right. On top of that. So, like, the royal family knows.
US court documents once again show the depth of the friendship. In an email sent in 2010, a few months after Epstein was released from his first prison stint, Andrew writes he'll try to visit him in New York for a couple of days before the summer, adding, "It'd be good to catch up in person." It's all leading to mounting political pressure too. Democrat members of the Congressional Committee investigating the handling of the Epstein case have been calling for Andrew to testify and threatening to compel him if he were ever to revisit the US.
Come clean.
I was going to say, how are you going to
before the U.S. Congress? Voluntarily testify. Don't wait for a subpoena. Come and testify and tell us what you know. At the end of the day, we want to know exactly what happened, not just to give justice to the survivors, but to prevent this from ever happening again.
Even as Andrew's royal status weakens, the scrutiny may yet intensify. John Sudworth, BBC News.
Oh, that's it?
Sarah
I was going to say,
Grishwood is an author and historian, and I spoke to her earlier and asked her when she thinks Andrew will make that move to Sandringham.
It's looking like after Christmas, which is no doubt, simply it takes a long time to move out of a 30-bedroom mansion where you've lived for 20 years. But also, of course, Sandringham is where the royal family, king and all, have traditionally spent Christmas. And they're not going to want to be bumping into Prince Andrew at every step.
Indeed. Now, in terms of next steps, there's some UK media reports this morning which suggest that Andrew could be in line for a 6-figure payout from the King to cover relocation costs. I mean, something like that, if it's true, is going to irk the British public who already largely believe that he shouldn't be getting anything from the taxpayer now.
No, I think the idea is he won't be getting anything from the taxpayer, not directly. This will come from King Charles' private wealth. I agree, on the one hand, there could easily be public thought of why should this man be subsidised? But on the other, from the palace's point of view, they're not going to want to cast Andrew out completely into the cold. On a personal level, he is still their mother's son, but also on a practical one. If they do, he's going to be looking for sources of finance elsewhere, and heaven forbid the thought of where he might find them.
And
so let me get this straight. There's fallout within the royal family. He was best friends with Epstein, very publicly friends with Epstein, despite all of the criminal activity that Epstein got charged with. But the royal family has to take care of Prince Andrew, because if they don't take care of Prince Andrew, he might get involved with even more illicit things to maintain his lavish royal lifestyle. Bruh, throw that man in fucking prison and be done with it. What's going on? I don't understand. Flustercluck, welcome to chat. The artist formerly known as Prince Andrew. Yeah, you caught up on that joke as well. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the the similar taste and humor. But yeah, this at this point, like, okay. Do I want to know who was on the Epstein files for all of the right reasons, right? To criminally prosecute everyone who was there, to give closure to the victims, to hold them accountable, so on and so forth. Yes, I 100% want the Epstein files to be treated for the right reasons. But at this point in time, with all of these trickling names coming out and the just absolute sheer amount of backlash that's occurring because of it, I am genuinely curious. I am genuinely curious at this point, like watching a train wreck happen in front of me. What dirt did Epstein have on all of these people, and to what purpose? There is no argument under the sun that Epstein created a child sex trafficking ring just because his friends were dirty little shits that wanted to touch children. I don't buy that. Nobody buys that. It had to be blackmail, and it was blackmail at an international level. When you have Prince Andrew and Trump and the Musk clan and various other Hollywood superstars and everything else under the sun. That had to be for influence, control, and power. Many argue that it was an Israeli blackmail sting, an operation to go after the absolute pinnacle of the elite globally to influence economic trends, stock market trends, manufacturing trends, military trends, but also geopolitical trends, to truly manipulate society. To what end? To make Israel immune to any sort of scrutiny whenever they choose to decide to implement the final solution against Palestinians. Now, that manipulation of the entire world to allow Israel to implement the final solution seems like a stretch and a whole lot of extra effort for doing something that apparently the most of the world doesn't give a shit about. But what other reason could there be? Why else would Epstein have created this ring and then hooked all of these rich, powerful men into it to then do what? That's what I don't understand. That's what I would like to know, is the actual purpose behind it at this point. I 100% want every single person on that list to go to prison forever, if not get the death penalty. But I also want to know the purpose behind the ring, because that is almost more perplexing than the fact that it existed in the first place. Andrew was young girls that Epstein provided for him. Virginia Gow mentioned him by name multiple times, and in her book, Fire and Israel. This connects to Al-Aqsa TV, which is the Gaza State TV. Oh. Didn't realize Gaza had state TV. I didn't realize they had the ability, honestly. Ooh, I have no idea. So the Arabic won't... I don't know. It's not letting me... Can you just send the link to Anna and she can copy and paste it? Or send it to me on Facebook or something? Because that is not working in any sense of the word. Okay. So, thank you, Anna, for finding a video about this Peru stuff.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. Fears are growing in Peru that supporters of the right-wing presidential candidate, Keiko Fujimori, will stage a coup to prevent her rival, the Socialist Teachers Union leader, Pedro Castillo, from taking power after winning the June 6 election. With all the votes counted, Castillo has a 44,000-vote lead, but Fujimori is claiming fraud without offering any evidence. She's calling for hundreds of thousands of votes to be annulled, mostly from poor Andean regions. Castillo is the son of Andean peasant farmers. He grew up in a remote village in a poor region. Fujimori is the daughter of the imprisoned former dictator Alberto Fujimori. On Friday, over 80 retired military officers urged the Peruvian armed forces not to recognize Castillo as president if he's formally declared the winner. The retired officers called on military leaders to, quote, act rigorously to remedy the election, claiming Castillo would be a, quote, illegal and illegitimate commander-in-chief. This comes as Keiko Fujimori is fighting to stay out of jail herself. A state prosecutor recently urged a judge to send her back to prison in connection with an ongoing corruption case. Michelle Bachelet, the former Chilean president, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, has urged Peruvians to accept the election results. She also condemned racist attacks on Castillo and voters from the Andes. She said, quote, I repudiate hate speech and discrimination in all its forms, as it is unacceptable in any democratic society. Over the weekend, thousands took to the streets of Peru for rival protests. This is a supporter of Pedro Castillo speaking from Lima.
This march is to fight the coup d'etat that Mrs. Keiko Fujimori intends. All this leadership is taking advantage of the circumstances to say that the election has been a fraud. Our brothers and sisters from the provinces have come to ask for their votes to be respected.
We go now to Lima, Peru, where we're joined by Jose Carlos Llerena. He is a Peruvian educator.
It explains the background of what's going on. So when Pedro Castillo actually took over, they tried to impeach him instead of doing a coup. But it was basically a coup, and then they said he was the one trying to do it. And that's the guy that Mexico is harboring in asylum. Am I understanding that correctly? Because if that's the case, then wow. Like, that is... They didn't even pretend at all to hide their malice and their ill intent of stopping a legitimately elected president from taking over and changing the way things are. Which brings me back to the 2026 midterms, and whether or not the government shutdown happens, I am fairly confident that this administration is going to interfere with our electoral process, regardless. Okay, so they are harboring his VP. Giving asylum to his VP, who was a woman. Okay. But Castillo himself, not so much. Gotcha. It's Siraj. So it's Siraj dot and then the TV/live and then the Arabic language. So, carrying on with this.
Educator and activist recently co-wrote a piece with Vijay Prashad for People's Dispatch titled The Coup That's Taking Place in Peru. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us, Juan Carlos. Jose Carlos, if you can start off by talking about the significance of the Castillo win and who exactly he is.
Good morning, Amy. It's a pleasure to be with you and with all people who is watching the program. Well, Pedro Castillo is a rural teacher, a former peasant patrol. We call here Rondas Campesinas, and is a union leader of the teachers union in Peru. In 2017, he led a protest, a huge protest that take almost 3 months of
Remember the protests? 3 months. 3 months of sustained protests is what it takes to effect regime change? The man. Proving that point.
Rally and protest, and he turned down two ministers for that such protest. So
and he was an indigenous tribal leader on top of that?
He's a popular leader. He's a popular leader because in the first round of these presidential elections, most of 48 of his voters says that they vote for Pedro Castillo because he's like them, a regular guy, a working class Peruvian. And also he has a message of sovereignty and patriotism. Pedro Castillo has declared and have said that the resources here in Peru have to be used for the Peruvian needs. And also, finally, Pedro Castillo have this feature of social justice and such message, for example, in education, in health, right now is so relevant in the middle of the pandemic that we are suffering here in Peru. So when you told me about the significance of Pedro Castillo, I have to say that it's the first time in 2,000 years of republic where Peruvian people choose for a popular candidature, a popular leader, a left leader. But I think that the best way to approach this case of Peru and Pedro Castillo and Peru Libre is not in the contradiction of right and left, but more in the contradiction of poor against rich, Lima against regions, and in the last part of the campaign, the campaign of Pedro Castillo was full of hope, but the campaign of Fujimori was of fear and threat, as you can see right now. So
the long and short of it is that Castillo was pretty much the FDR of Peru, was pretty much the socialist revolutionary for Peruvians, and in a way that Peru had never seen before, right? And embracing indigenous culture, indigenous history, was speaking for of and behalf of the people, the whole kit and caboodle. And then when he won, rightfully so, the government immediately ostracized him and made him out to be this villain, tried to, I think, and successfully prevented him from assuming his position, and has since caused all sorts of controversy from occurring. And then the Peruvian government that we just watched earlier, the video about Mexico and Peru, apparently is still holding a grudge based on that and trying to lambaste Claudia Sheinbaum. Now that we have the context of 4 years ago, that makes a whole lot more sense about how ludicrously propagandized that video was. This video right here
Another
from
crisis.
Al Jazeera English was the pure propaganda that has been spewed from America and Peru about Castillo, or the former vice president for Castillo. So, thank you for finding that video in that context, because that was very desperately needed. Okay. Another context clue that we need is this. 2 days ago...
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. Sagar and Ryan with some new bombshell reporting about Venezuela. You definitely want to stay tuned for that one. A lot of moving pieces there and fantastic reporting on your part and Ryan's part. We also have updates with regard to the shutdown. Trump partying away at a Great Gatsby-themed party while food stamp benefits run dry. A judge is intervening and saying that they do have to tap emergency funds to pay out those benefits, so that remains in limbo as we speak this morning. We got a bunch of stuff going on with Kash Patel over at the FBI under fire once again, this time for flying around in a taxpayer-funded private jet in order to see his girlfriend. He is speaking out, responding in a relatively both humiliating and entertaining way. So
Yeah, humiliation first, entertaining for the rest of us.
Indeed. We're also taking a look at Fox News, and a bunch of conservative influencers fell for these rage bait welfare queen AI videos. So we'll break that down for you. We are quite cooked when it comes to AI. These videos are getting very believable, apparently. Also, a wild story out of Israel. I'm not even sure how to characterize this one, but you guys remember the whole right to rape riots that unfolded in Israel? Well, now this...
What? Did what? Israelis protested in Israel for the right to grape. Did we miss that? I don't remember that. Or if we did cover that, I must have been so beside myself that it just, my brain was like, you know what? That is clearly a triggering thing, so we're going to just erase that from your brain. Christ. We covered it. I think I vaguely remember that now. I think I vaguely remember that context now. Oh my goodness. Okay. I get that they're trying to like set the stage here, but like let's
about how awesome these socks are. Definitely not trying to sell me a pair of shoes, but nonetheless, I appreciate his compliment. It is great, by the way, to be back on Standard Time. The sun did rise again. And
Caribbean. Are we going to war against Venezuela?
I doubt it. I don't think so, but they've been treating us very badly, not only on drugs. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country that we didn't want. People from prisons, they emptied their prisons into our country.
See, I want to watch this video, but why are you giving Trump a full expose on your video?
Compiled a number of comments and setting the ground for any potential invasion, regime change, strike, CIA operation, assassination, etc. The craziest one so far is you will be shocked to learn that Maduro is now Hamas and in fact is pro-terrorist. This is from the White House counterterrorism advisor Seb Gorka in an interview from the White House lawn. Let's take a listen.
And it is primarily about the drugs, Rob, but it's not just about the drugs. Yeah. I can't talk about the classified aspects of this, but in open source right now, your viewers can go online and they can search for the connections of that regime, the Maduro regime, to other bad actors, other states, other nations who, for example, have been plotting to target members of this administration, including the president. Iran's tentacles into this hemisphere go straight through Caracas.
Iran's tentacles wrapped through Caracas. Venezuela. You can't even make this shit up, honestly. And by the way, that's not even the craziest part. We'll get to in a little bit about
apparently you can make this shit up because the U.S. government is the one that is making that shit up and then spewing it on the news, and then the news laps it up and gives it an equitable platform. Here's the thing. If we have a free press, the job of the free press would be to look that government official in the eyes and say, you are lying, you are full of shit, you are lying to the American people, and you need to be held accountable. Instead of, oh yeah, tell me more. Tell me more about how Iran is fueling Venezuela. Oh, tell me more about how Maduro is Hamas. Yeah, please continue regurgitating all of your propaganda. Or, if they're not going to, at the very least, condemn the government official, be like, we're not airing propaganda at this time. When you actually have facts and news to share with the American people, you're more than welcome to come back on, and then click. Or just click in general. Like, you do not need to give these people a platform. I get that they're the government, but when the government is literally propagandizing and is literally manufacturing consent, it is your responsibility, your duty, your obligation as journalists to hold them accountable in some way, not just be like, oh, wow. Yeah, tell me more. Oh, wow, they're really bad. Ooh, Iran, you said? Wow. Tell me more about how they're Hamas. I'm so sick of American propaganda. They tried to liberate the soldiers who were arrested. Oh, yeah. I can't believe that fucking Gorka is part of this administration. I can't believe a lot of things about this administration, but here we are.
They're pro-Iran, they're pro-Russia, they're pro-China, they're pro-Hamas, they're terrorists, but they're drug traffickers. They're everything under the sun that you need to facilitate a violent regime change in Venezuela now currently. And I think what I'm just the most galled by is, again, the level of seriousness which I do not think that the mainstream media is taking this. So the strikes, the land strikes, remains a possibility. We'll get to that in a moment. But the simple fact is, you know, you can look, the State Department on the record gave Ryan and I a statement saying Maduro is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela. It's one of the craziest things I've ever read. You know, literally a total declaration from the United States government, an on the record statement from the spokesperson to Marco Rubio declaring this person illegitimate, said we have a $50 million bounty. Something that many sources and I have been speaking to is that $50 million, you know, the impetus behind that is basically to get every mercenary under the sun to mount some violent operation against Maduro. And so there are all kinds of sketchy Blackwater-style guys who are flooding the Caribbean, Guyana, and Colombia, buying all sorts of weapons because they want their payday. And so that's the type of thing that we're endorsing. Who knows what will happen if this regime completely collapses and everybody's just acting like it's just pie in the sky and democracy will prevail on day one. I think the opposite's going to happen. And all signs currently point in that direction.
Yeah, well, to your point about the mainstream press, you know, what I saw written up in the New York Times this morning about that 60 Minutes clip we showed you from Trump is, oh, he says we're not going to be at war with Venezuela.
Like, what? No, that's not what he said.
The headline is he said Maduro's days are numbered.
Exactly.
Now, maybe he doesn't want to come out and be like, oh, yeah, we're going to war tomorrow. But we already know from the New York Times reporting, by the way, backed up by Sagar and Ryan, that he has greenlit these CIA operations. We see what's happening with our own eyes with striking these random drug boats, with the bounty that's put on him, with the massing of military.
They're not random drug boats. They have literally been confirmed to be fishermen. Fishermen. Even this people who are going out of their way to be sassy and catty and you know whatever are still cannot stop parroting the propaganda. That is how ingrained it is in our society that even independent news networks who are actively, vehemently opposed to this administration still can't stop parroting propaganda. It's infuriating. It's infuriating.
Assets in the region. We know about the internal push. I can't even call it a tug of war. It's just an all-out push towards war and regime change operations in Venezuela. So, you know, when I hear the president of the United States say, yeah, his days are numbered, well, how do you think that you think it's just going to be, an organic uprising of the people in Venezuela? No, that is not remotely what we're talking about here. You know, with regard to the migration piece as well, it's complete insanity. First of all, his whole, they opened up the insane asylums. I continue to believe that he actually thinks the asylum process is the same as opening up insane asylums. But, you know, you've had actually a bipartisan project.
Well, that's what I get for skipping the 60 Minutes interview. Did he seriously say that? Did I miss that? That he thinks the asylum process is dumping asylum, insane asylum people into America, and that's what it is? Okay, cool. So we have the dumbest fucking person on the planet in charge of our country, filling the most important positions in our government with also dumb people whose qualifications are their ability to deep throat a boot and their willingness to commit crimes on live television. Outstanding.
Project in the U.S., which has pushed a lot of people out of Venezuela to migrate to other countries, including our own. I mean, Marco Rubio and those types, they have been the ones that have, welcomed Venezuelans into the country. Now, I support migration, but I also support people being able to live in their own country and have it not be wrecked by sanctions, onerous sanctions, which are part of what has created the economic misery in that country as well. So in any case, if you have a failed state there and chaos, guess how many people are going to want to leave that country? You're very likely to have an increased migration crisis, which is going to be obviously first and foremost a problem for those individuals who have to flee the area. You're going to have fallout spillover effects for countries in the region and also, for our own country as well. So the whole thing is completely insane, but my mind was blown by the framing from the mainstream press of he says he's not going forward with invasion. Everybody calm down. There's not going to be a war. It's going to be fine.
What they mean by that is that they're not going to be a full-scale invasion. And maybe there won't be a full-scale invasion. They don't think that they need to. They think they can militarily pressure him to step down or cause some sort of CIA internal coup inside of the country. By the way, that's way worse, right? Because if you're going to do it, then you need to do it. You need to do it properly, and you need to occupy the country for some 20-odd years. I don't support that, just to be very clear, but that's pretty much the only way that it would ever work. In the meantime, we've got our CIA-backed, people like Maria Machado, who has recently been given the Nobel Peace Prize and is a 100% U.S.-backed. There's no other way to describe it. I'll get to my reporting in a bit about some of the details. I have the exact numbers on the number of dollars that flew into her coffers and the entire Venezuelan opposition over the last 5 years. But listen, this is a very sophisticated political actor. She's now giving interviews saying that Maduro is tied to Hamas, to the Palestinian resistance. He's a terrorist.
They are literally, oh my Christ. They are literally trying to say that Maduro is Hamas. It's not even a meme. They are literally saying this unironically. They are literally using that as justification. Zionism, capitalism, fascism, all of the isms are one big mire of malevolence, a cancer and a curse upon the human race that just needs to be purged through literal fire. Actual fire needs to purge these people and all of the actors involved.
She supports the land strikes. She has been behind the scenes. I can tell you all in a little bit about the level of support that she's given to the Tren de Aragua accusations, to the drug trafficking accusations. She is the number one force in Washington and around the Western world to push violent regime change so that she herself can assume the presidency and has hundreds of millions of dollars at her disposal. Here's the interview she gave. I mean, it's, again, a parody, literally a parody. Let's take a listen.
For years, we were, asking the world to understand the degree of the threat and this devastation the Maduro regime was building in Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela has been turned into the safe haven for the activities of all criminal international networks, from the drug cartels to the Colombian guerrilla, to those groups that smuggle gold and destroy communities of our indigenous people and the ecology, to networks that smuggle arms and even human trafficking and child prostitution. This is horrible, what we're living. Russian agents.
So this bitch, and I'm going to say it, and that is not PC of me, that is not very presidential, that isn't very congressional, that isn't very leadership, statesman of the year of me at all. This fucking bitch is literally spewing forth every single lie that she can think of, listing off every crime that she can think of that's heinous in nature and international, and saying, yep, Maduro's doing that, and that's why he needs to. The fact that these people are being given platforms, being able to use those platforms to then spew forth these lies without any challenge to those lies whatsoever. She is not being told or challenged to provide any proof, any evidence, any backing, anything. She can just say all this shit. Trump can just say all this shit. Rubio, J.D. Vance, all of these right-wing sociopaths can just spew forth at the mouth and be taken at face value. But then challenging it, they expect you to have a dissertation to go after each and every single point that they made. Make it make sense. And then explain to me how that is not propaganda. There's something for everyone on her list of what Maduro is supposedly doing. No, that's exactly it. She is just... We'll... And honestly...
Iranian agents freely operating in Venezuela, Hezbollah and Hamas being located in our country. And we have asked for years the international community to cut these sources that come from
even threw
drug
Hezbollah
trafficking and other criminal activities. Finally, this is happening.
So you think those killings are justified then? That's what I really want to understand. Are they justified? Or are they, as the UN would say, extrajudicial killings?
This is about saving lives. And Maduro is absolutely conscious, and he has been warned what not to do. These deaths are the responsibility of Nicolás Maduro.
What about the rights to due process of the people who were on those boats?
I certainly defend the rights of everyone, not only Venezuelans. That's why my voice has been, loud all along this process. But you need to understand, all the international community need to understand that this is a very cruel war. It was Maduro who turned this into an international conflict. Look, when you
So this is the Michel Hussein show. Okay, cool. Michel Hussein, why the fuck are you not pushing back against this sociopath? Why are you not pushing back against her? Why are you not challenging her? Why are you literally just asking her a question that she is allowed to answer and then not even rebutting it whatsoever? What is going on? Right. The only suggestion is to stop care what they say. Yeah.
Are those people expendable on the boats?
And then her little smirk there when she asked, "Oh, so what about the people on the boats?" As if that's a gotcha. Buddy, she just listed every heinous organization in the past 2 decades like she was reading it from a piece of paper, and you didn't challenge any of it or laugh in her face? Okay. I think we're done with this video. Because clearly the long and short, the purpose of this video, of why we were watching it, was to set the stage, to build context as to why Maduro is an authoritarian dictator, according to everybody in Western media or society, right? And why the lady that's being interviewed, her name I can't remember now because my mind is just blown, is just again licking the boot and kissing the ring of the Trump administration so she can be put into a position of power in Venezuela when or if Trump manages to successfully remove Maduro, or attempts to at the very least. Maria Corina Machado. Yeah, her and Trump are absolutely the same person. That is clearly, and honestly, I think she's a little bit smarter than Trump because she actually knows all the different groups, but she's just as brazen as Trump by lying so blatantly and overtly about it. Okay. So now we have the full context. Right. She may be worse because she's smarter. So now we have the full context of both Castillo and Maria, and why Maduro is being portrayed as a dictator when he's literally a sovereign head of state that has been trying his best while facing all of this regime change, all of this CIA influence, all of this pressure from Western society to not be who he is. So in the 12 minutes that we have remaining, let's hopefully watch a video that isn't soul-crushing.
China's Tiangong, Heavenly Palace, isn't just a space station. It's the most modern outpost humanity has ever built in orbit. At around 400 kilometers above Earth, this shining white laboratory circles the planet every 90 minutes, carrying a crew of taikonauts who live, eat, and work inside a station that looks more like a futuristic apartment than a piece of Cold War hardware. For decades, the International Space Station, or ISS, has been the crown jewel of human spaceflight, a collaboration between 5 space agencies and more than a dozen nations. But it's also more than 25 years old, and now a new player has entered orbit. Between 2021 and 2022, China built and fully assembled an entirely new station from the ground up in just 18 months. And it's not just smaller or newer, it's smarter. So, strap in, because this is life inside China's Tiangong space station. Before Tiangong, China's human spaceflight ambitions were limited to a few test missions, small single-module laboratories known as Tiangong-1 and Tiangong-2. They were stepping stones, short-term missions to test docking, life support, and crew endurance. But in April 2021, that all changed. China launched the Tianhe Core Module, which literally translates to Harmony of the Heavens. At 16.6 meters long and 4.2 meters wide, it serves as the control center, power hub, and crew quarters of the entire station. A year later, the station began to take shape. In July 2022, the Wentian module, Quest for the Heavens, was added. It brought an entirely new science laboratory, additional living space, and an airlock designed for extravehicular activities, China's equivalent of NASA's spacewalks. Then, in October 2022, the Mengtian module, meaning Dreaming of the Heavens, joined the structure, completing the T-shaped station we see today. Mengtian is dedicated purely to research, housing advanced experiment racks, and external mounting platforms for instruments that study everything from fluid physics to space materials.
Okay. Not gonna lie, I personally find this very interesting. I personally find this extremely exciting. I think the engineering that's involved, the fact that they built it in 18 months, the fact that it's modernized, the fact that they have all these different experiments going on from, again, they were getting into the fluids, viscosity, different material sciences, and all this other stuff. I think that is exciting. However, this is like a documentary video, and it is not very exciting. I thought maybe this would be closer to like a Chinese SpaceX propaganda type video. And this is SpaceX Insider, so thanks, Elon, I guess. But, oh wait, that's a small channel. But yeah, like, I thought it was going to be more like the pizzazz and them being in it so that we can, you know, comment on the little things. That being said, though, this is obviously a marvel of human science. And I'm glad that China has entered the space race. I'm really glad that other countries are beginning to take space travel and space exploration and space sciences seriously. Because quite frankly, at the rate we're going to need to escape planet Earth, or we're just going to cease to exist regardless. With our only evidence of having ever existed being on the moon that people don't even believe we landed on in the first place. So, correct. And India has their space program up and about. Of course, Russia has theirs as well. But it's refreshing to know that space, the final frontier, is making its way back into the limelight, where it belongs. Yeah, we actually watched everything on stream. And we even added a couple of extra videos so that we could have more context on some of the stuff we talked about. So we'll do this. We will end a little early. I'll just do a little bit longer of an expose than I normally do. So we have covered a much broader scope of international news than we normally do. And that's because, again, if we just talk about Gaza and Israel, I am going to crash out, and B, that is soul crushing. It is depressing to talk about. It is truly soul crushing to talk about. Even if we were talking about the not Gaza Strip, the every other place of Palestine, it instead of genocide and massacre, now we're going to be talking about colonization, settlerism, and indigenous Palestinians being tortured, harassed, shot, killed, and their homes stolen from them by Israelis while the police stay about. And that is just as depressing as talking about the genocide in the Gaza Strip. That being said, the world, there isn't as much good news going around as we would like. I would love to talk about, advancements in science, advancements in medicine, hell, even advancements in education. I would even be okay talking about a renowned and respected composer or musician, regardless, or artist, getting some sort of accolade that, is making waves. But no, we can't find that news, right? We actively look for that kind of news just to sprinkle in between the dystopian nightmares, like the Tanzania auntie claiming she won 98% of the popular vote despite there being violent civil unrest, right? So we are actively trying to find less dystopian nightmare content to talk about, because we also don't want to destroy our own souls and crash out on stream the entire time. We want to be engaging and actually show what humanity is doing outside of the United States. So, with that being said, hopefully tomorrow we can maybe scrape together some decent, happy stories, or at least interesting and intriguing stories that are presented in an interesting and an intriguing manner. But what we are seeing, and which we covered a little bit here, is that most of the news is probably still going to be cycling around Mamdani and the responses and the fallout from the Trump administration and conservatives generally, as well as the other fascist regimes throughout the world trying to consolidate power. So, with that, I would like to once again wholeheartedly express my thanks and gratitude for everybody who was watching and joining us today, or who may be watching later on. This has been your 48th president. We stream, as you can see, Tuesdays through Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow will be Recap Thursdays. Today was Worldwide Wednesdays. And Tuesdays are Taco Tuesdays. We talk about U.S. policies and politics on Tuesdays, global stuff on Wednesdays, and a mix of everything on Thursdays, whether we missed it or whether it just is breaking news. So, with that being said, have a great one. Take care, everybody. Good night. See you tomorrow.